Some of us know that actually one of the things that I love to do is play tennis. Haven't played in a little while, but it is such a compelling sport for me for a lot of reasons. Not only for someone who is learning and playing, but also to see it on display when it's done so incredibly well. Everybody knows, has been here for a while, I'm a Fed fan. Federer is kind of like the guy I look up to. But there's this guy named Rafael Nadal. I don't know if you know his name. He is an amazing tennis player. He's won 17 Masters from the Grand Slam, 10 from the French Open, which is unheard of. But if you watch him play, if anybody's watched him play, he's quite interesting. He has all these little routines, little tics, that at first you're kind of like, oh, in fact, all tennis players have them. When they're about to serve, sometimes they'll bounce 3 balls, sometimes they'll bounce 5. When they're really stressed out, they'll bounce 17 times. They have something that they do on a regular basis, a routine, to help them focus, because it's a very stressful sport. In fact, if you think about it, tennis requires the full-blown athleticism, the full-blown strategy and tactics, but it's also the most singular mono sport there is. In other words, you don't have a team, you're out there all by yourself. In fact, golf, which is also a very psychological, difficult sport to play, complex kind of strokes, and a lot of people, if you get like a mental little tick, your golf game is gone. At least at the professional level, you have a caddy. Here in tennis, you can't even get coached. Serena Williams in the last U.S. Open, her coach did this, come in, and she got nailed for it because you can't even get coached. You're out there all alone, and it's so stressful. So you can kind of see that these players, they manage all of the complexity of the game and all that's going on in their own lives, in their own hearts, just to focus and be in the zone and passionate all the time. But if you see him, the way he does it is he has all these little tics. In other words, I'll just give a few. One of the 17 that people have noticed, by the way. One of them is he has an exact way of putting his bottles. Okay? So if you see him, when he sits down in the changeover, he's drinking, and it's not a random drinking. It's 1 sip and 4 sips. Okay? No, it's 1 and 2, cold and warm. And when he puts them down, he has to make the labels face exactly the same direction. Right? So if you're a psychologist or somebody who dabbles at it, you realize this is OCD behavior. Okay? Obsessive compulsive. But it's not just the bottles. It's kind of funny. At one of the tournaments, it turns out that he had drunken his water down to about this level, and a wind gust came and pushed the bottle, and the bottle was kind of flying away. Everybody knows his kind of thing about this. So the ball boy ran over, grabbed the water bottle, and carefully put it down like this. And Nadal looked over and smiled. He was like, "Ooh, I can play now." You'll notice that he actually never walks on the lines when he's walking. He has to walk over them. He never touches them. And in fact, whenever he crosses a line, he only uses his right leg. Because that's his habit, okay? If you've ever seen him serving, it's hilarious, okay? In fact, he goes through this routine. He has to grab his butt, and I'm not joking. He has to pull out and adjust his shorts, okay? And then he goes to he's lefty, so he goes to his right shoulder, and then his left shoulder, and adjusts his, right? And then he goes nose, ear, nose, ear. Okay? He does this every single time while he's bouncing the ball. Okay? Sorry, wrong hand. He's left-handed. While he's bouncing the ball, right? Crotch in the back, right? Shoulder, nose, ear, nose, ear. I can't even do it without having to think through, but this is habitual for him. In fact, I saw him when he was receiving serve. He doesn't even have the ball in his hands, and he's doing this, right? This is the way he plays. And if you realize, he's been doing this not only for a few years, he's been doing this whole time. He adjusts his pattern every now and then. He used to wear long socks, and so he would pull his socks up as well. But you get a sense that, wow, this is a lot. This is a lot of OCD behavior. But so much of it is habitual. I bet you this is not only on the court. This is what he does when he's training. This is what he does when he goes to his room, when he gets up in the morning before he goes to sleep. His life revolves around habits. And it's the habits that give him the ability to actually not only contain and kind of nurture his passion and keep him at this excellent level. Maybe we're not called to live a life like that, where everything that we do, is habitual. But in fact, if we look at our lives, as some scientists have done, so much of what we do is habitual. Okay? If anybody's been a driver, you know what I'm talking about. Everything that you often I'm talking, but my eyes are moving to all the mirrors all the time. I know exactly where the cars are as best I can as they're coming up behind me because of the mirrors. There's stuff that you do that you don't even realize. I get home sometimes and I realize, how did I get home? I have no idea. I'm on autopilot. Everybody knows this because you have this habitual way of doing things. Some people more, some people less. But as I'm going to reference it just a little later on, a Duke University group studied this and they estimated that 40% of what we do, in general, 40% is out of this unconscious habitual action. You've done over and over enough that you've acquired this pattern of behavior. You don't have to think about it, that in fact you just do. Something triggers you and you're just doing it and you don't even realize it. 40% of our lives operates on this habitual way. Well, if we're talking about what it means to know God, to walk with Him, become like Him, the call and the beauty of discipleship, it means our habits have to be addressed by who God is. If we're called to imitate Him, guess what? Our habits have to respond that way. If we're called to a life of flourishing, not just physically, emotionally, and personally, but spiritually and in relationship with others and with God, our habits have to be shaped and re-engineered His way. We are in a second week of an 8-week series called Practicing Devotion, that we realize that people who are even Christians have no first-hand relationship with God. Sometimes they come to church, which is great, but when they go through a crisis, they don't know how God is meeting them. It's hard to, because we've lived out habits in such a way where God is not in our daily lives. This is a kind of an attempt to give us an extra boost so that we can do this together in community, in our groups, to say, how do we forge a sustainable lifestyle of talking to God, hearing from Him, engaging Him every single day, starting off with a small amount, but building in such a way where it becomes a beautiful, godly habit. It becomes something that we don't have to fight against to do, but instead, it is a part of us. When we look at Jesus, what was His habit? Because actually, Jesus lived out a full human life. We get glimpses that He didn't just simply spontaneously go wherever God called Him. There were habits in His life, godly habits that we're called to imitate. As we look in Luke chapter 4, verse 16, it says that Jesus made His way to His hometown, Nazareth, where He grew up, where He had been brought up. And on the Sabbath day, which is a Saturday for the Jews, on that Saturday morning, He went into the synagogue as was His custom. In other words, this is something that He had done growing up, that He was trained to do, that He was called to do, and continue to do. Now, Jesus is traveling left and right all the time. Now, if you think about this, if you know who Jesus is and Jesus knows who He is the very Son of God. Okay? He is called into this incredible experience with Him where He hears God directly. God says, "This is my Son, in Him who I'm well pleased." Whatever He says, follow. This is Jesus, God in the flesh. Why does He have to go to synagogue? Okay? Why does He have to? I can say maybe Nazareth is a podunk town. It is like Staten Island if you're a Manhattanite. Okay, it is a place where it's like low quality. This is the ghetto. Why would you want to go to a? You went back home, but you're going to the church, the synagogue, where your pastor, your rabbi, is probably not a very good speaker. All right, because that's the general. I'm speculating. This is my context. Right? Well, what is he going to benefit from going to Nazareth for? Well, it's his custom. He does this all the time. He has a godly habit of practicing Sabbath. He has a godly habit of doing things often, over and over again, until that becomes who he is, where his strength lies. Chapter later, Luke 5:16, it says, in the midst of all that's going on, and you got to realize, in his limitation, even as a human being, he was inundated with so much stress. People were coming to him constantly, heal me, help me, do this for me, so on and so forth. And if you've ever been around just a crowd where everybody is just clamoring around you, you're exhausted, physically, emotionally, and relationally. But what would he do? As a habit, he would pull out. And he would often, that word describes habitual, withdraw to lonely places, be with God. You see who he is? He doesn't do this because he's forced to, because he absolutely needs to. He could probably get by a day without having to be recharged in this way. But no, he longs to. It is something that's built in him because he's been doing it. It is habitual. There's not a lot of language in the scriptures, and I'm going to point out a couple of them, where you see somebody doing it out of habit, a godly thing, a good thing, a wonderful thing out of habit. But we do see a lot of expressions where God actually calls us to live our life in such a way that echoes his life. He looks at our way of life. That's a biblical language of habit. How are we living? What are the acquired practices, patterns of practice and behavior that we've learned and that we've put into our lives in such a way that we do it all the time? And it becomes a strength for us, a part of our relationship with God. Paul in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 10 says to Timothy, saying, you know me. You know all about my teaching and my way of life, my habitual way of doing these things. Serve God, to know him, to love him. My purpose, faith, patience, love, and endurance. This is the way I live, my way of life. It is habitual, intentionally. Hebrews chapter 10, 24, 25 describes an old habit that they used to have to gather together, to meet together, to encourage each other. But in this circumstance, the context is they're coming under immense persecution from the Jews. Their houses are being looted, their life is in danger. And it's saying, now some people are giving up this beautiful habit of coming together to encourage each other and strengthen each other. And instead, they're giving up this meeting, and that's the new habit that they're doing. And so you get a sense that not only in the book of Hebrews are people's habits under scrutiny and under attention, and rightfully so, but all throughout. The whole book of Proverbs can be understood as how do you live a certain way of life that is fruitful, that is wise, that actually is in response to the way God would have you? How do you build patterns and habits in terms of the way that you deal with money, the way you deal with relationships? And in fact, if you look through your life and your relationships through the lens of habit, it might speak to a lot. Sometimes it's really hard to get into the habit of doing something really, really good, like forgiving. Everybody knows you should forgive, right? But if you don't forgive a lot, and somebody says something mean to you, if you're in the habit of exacting revenge, whether it's directly, right, or it's passive-aggressively, guess what? To forgive them is so, so hard. But if you've been forgiving somebody, okay, every day, guess what? After a while, it becomes habitual. For some, giving generously to need is really hard. You might have a lot of money, or you might have no money, and there's a lot of reasons why. But you see somebody in need, and you want to give, but it's hard. It's like, oh. But if you're a habitual giver, you put it in your budget, it is easy. It makes kind of sense when Jesus says, give not so that other people can see you and that be your reward, but give in such a way that your left hand does not know what your right hand is doing. It's almost automatic. It's like instinctual. You just, oh, okay. You don't even know it because that's what you've been doing. That's your habit. You kind of get a sense of how if we looked at our discipleship life, our relational life through the lens of habit, it would explain a lot. Why it is so hard sometimes to follow God, to do the right thing, to live in the way that he would have us live, his way of life. Because we've got old habits in the way, and they have to give way to new habits. So a habit simply is something you've done over and over and over for a while in such a way that it's become an acquired pattern. It becomes automatic. And as I mentioned, this is the study by the Duke University. You can't read it very well, but it came out in 2006, and they did a beautiful survey of understanding. People are trying to understand how we are kind of built in this way. 40% of what we do is actually done in habits. Well, as you can surmise, it's not just the OCD versions of grabbing your butt and your shoulder when you're playing tennis, but there are some good habits and some bad habits. Good habits that actually bring life to yourself and others. Good habits that are actually really you'd want, and who doesn't want to have good, healthy exercise and good dental hygiene? I don't have very good dental hygiene patterns, versus the bad ones. Who wouldn't want to actually have a great pattern of eating so healthy? That you have energy, and you don't have to think, oh man, I really want that burger, but I gotta eat good. But instead, you actually like eating good, and the burger kind of feels like it's gross, it's greasy. Who wouldn't want to have the habit of just exercising so often and so well that, in fact, it's a part of your life? You don't have to struggle, I gotta go to the gym again. Oh, I hate this. But instead, it's like, if you don't exercise, you feel weird, and it's a part of your life. We try to build these kind of habits in our kids. I remember trying to teach my daughters how to brush their teeth regularly. It was so hard. It was so hard. I'm like, this should be so simple, but it's not. But we see how important it is. Now they're like, you don't even think about it, right? When you wake up and you go to sleep, at least twice, sometimes 3 times a day, you just brush your teeth, right? There are bad habits too. Stuff that we do that we don't even realize at times. I used to be a nail biter. Anybody nail biters? Former nail biters, right? And I don't even know why. I just like my mom would look at my fingernails and she'd be like, "You were biting your nails again." I said, "What?" And usually there's a cue. I'll describe kind of how habits work. Something triggers you. You get a little anxious about something. Somebody looked at you funny or said something, and all of a sudden you're nervous. You're thinking about a test or thinking about an inadequacy or thinking about something, and you get a little nervous. And what do? You start chewing, right? It's hard to break these simple habits. Sometimes habits become incredibly engrossing. They trap our minds and our thinking and our patterns. Cell phone practice can be like a habit, like an alien thing that's going to take control of you, right? Well, we can joke about these kinds of habits that actually, after you practice over and over again, now you don't even have the will to break it. That's how heroin addiction actually starts. It starts with simply, you get an injury and you're taking prescription medicine, and it feels so good. The pain prompts you, and you go through this routine, you're taking your medicine, and the reward is so beautiful. You're without pain. But then, guess what? When the pain comes again, you're trapped. But no longer is the reward, no longer is the thing working. And actually, you have to increase to a point of a lot of people, millions are trapped in this habit gone wrong. It's not just the 40% of harmless habits that we have. They can actually make a huge difference in our lives. A habit is something that becomes so automatic that that's our natural response. And until we do something intentionally to break it, or something happens, we're stuck. Well, I noticed this through the lens of, as a dog owner, as a dog trainer. We've got a 10-month-old shepherd. This is not her, by the way. But when we were learning up about shepherds, German shepherds have the second strongest bite strength in all dogs. Rottweilers are number 1. German shepherds are 2. And she had these little baby teeth at first. They were razor sharp, but we knew that she was going to have these monster teeth. And if you look at my dog, and actually I walk my dog every day, people are normally used to big dogs. They're like, oh, how cute. Others who are not, a lot of Asians don't like big dogs. They freak out. They look at it, right? And in fact, they look at her teeth and they freak out. If she starts barking, it's over. Because she's very gentle, but she can be a fearsome dog. She's gentle because we trained her. I read the story of this golden retriever, and everybody loves golden retrievers. They're so cute. And they trained this golden retriever full-blown to be a service dog, to take blind people from place to place. They're so socialized and they're so good. Well, this golden retriever actually was given to this family to be a service dog. And the golden retriever was coming out of the minivan, and as the golden retriever was coming out, somebody in the family closed the side door on its tail. Okay? And the dog went, "Arr!" And as an instinct, it actually bit into its owner's face 4 times. Good thing it wasn't a German Shepherd, because the owner would have been gone. But and they didn't like, this dog is a service dog. How is it possible that she would bite her owner 4 times? Because it was a natural, responsive reflex. So I read that, and I'm like, okay, it's not happening with my dog. So what we did was we trained her to have the habit of any time, like, they can tell when it's hard, like a bone, or when it's soft, like human flesh. And any time she bit us, okay, with those little baby razor teeth, my dog, we would act like a puppy. Okay? So we'd play and play, and she would bite us, and I would go, "Arr!" And she would stop. She would look at me like, what do I do? What do I do? She had no idea. And we'd play. "Arr!" And it actually became kind of funny, because it took a while, actually. But I even added a little extra. I noticed that when I would step on her foot, and she would go, "Arr!" Sometimes she would lick her paw like this. Yeah? So when she would bite me, right, I would go, "Arr!" And I would start licking. And Yun and my wife and my daughter, they caught me doing that. And they cracked up. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm training her. I'm teaching her bite inhibition. To this day, it worked. She is so gentle around her hands. I play tug with her, and I bring the tug right to my face. Her second strongest bite of all dogs is right here. And she's like, and she's chewing on this thing. But I am unafraid because it is her absolute habit to not bite. She's so careful. I put food in my mouth, like a slice of apple, and I have her, I know it feels gross for people, all dog owners know what I'm talking about. And I have her go ahead and take it from my mouth. And she won't bite. She'll be so careful to make sure she gets it off, so careful. Because that has been trained into her as a habit. Okay? You see how important habits are, not just for dogs, but for us. In fact, if we were careful about this and let God take over our habits, how much of our life would move toward Him in godliness? How much of our life would be freed from the ugly stuff, instead replaced with the healthy and the good? Habits are in the world of self-help and business and psychology. People are understanding how important this is. There are 2 books here. That Stephen Covey book sold 25 million copies. That's a lot of copies. Okay, I like this book actually. If you have a chance to read it, it helps us understand how habits work and how actually companies are using it to manipulate you. You don't even realize it, right? And in fact, they know how to market because of our subconscious habitual nature. But one of the beautiful things about habits is they're describing is that they're not all the same. Some habits actually work to build other habits. Okay? They call them keystone habits. It's like a keystone is something like a stone in the middle and the top that it is the center. You take it out and everything else kind of breaks off. But if you put it in, it holds everything else in place. Another way to understand keystone is like you turn over one domino, one keystone habit, and all the other habits begin to come into place. Okay? So they use exercise as a keystone habit. So if you are exercising, guess what? It's easier to eat better. You sleep better because you're a little more tired and get more out of your sleep. Your way of approaching your day begins to shift. Did you know that? That in fact, if you get this one thing well, your exercise, your daily exercise, it opens up good habits down the line. It's a keystone habit. What if our daily connection with God, our face-to-face time with Him, is like a keystone habit? Can you imagine what it would look like to actually have time with God, to be inundated with Him telling you, I love you. I am not only powerful, I'm good. I plan for your life. I know where you are. Okay? Come and talk to me. Pour out your heart to me. Come, I have things to share with you and show you. I'm a good shepherd. I can lead you well. Don't listen to that which is so destructive. Listen to me. I'll affirm you. Don't keep doing this which will bring you death. Choose the patterns of life. Can you imagine if you had that face-to-face encounter with God every single day? How it would change your struggles and obstacles. That if you realize how much you're forgiven and you're experiencing that every single day, when somebody else rubs you wrong, your habits and your practice of forgiveness is going to change because of this keystone habit. When you don't know what to do, and you're begging to hear from God, but you don't ever try this, and you're trying it for the first time, yeah, God might grace you wonderfully, but in fact, how much more beautiful and easy is it to hear God when it's your habit to listen to Him? We've been practicing it for 1 week, and it wasn't been easy. I think the ladies are doing better than the guys, just my hunch. The guys are a little off and on, and we're trying, and we're like, come on, guys! We're trying to give accountability, encouragement, but yeah, starting a habit's not easy. Because by starting a new one, you have to break other ones. You have to look at what is in my day, what is in my kind of subconscious that comes and takes control that I have to pay attention to and respond to. This keystone habit of spending time face-to-face with God every day isn't the end-all be-all, okay? But it actually is a building block where you can build a life with God. Does that make sense? You do this one and you do it well, you put your energy into it and your faithfulness into it. You take this time with God and it bleeds into all of your relationships. It bleeds into your relationship with your finances. Instead of being so anxious, you hear and you know God's got you. He's going to be with you, never leave or forsake you. The book of Hebrews, that's everything to do with your finances. You have this ability to actually say, I'm going to choose not the route of just safety, but the route of faith, because He is pouring into you. When you do something over and over and over again physically, and you're trained into it, guess what? It becomes natural. Okay? Tennis players know this, golf players know this, so on and so forth. It's a thing called muscle memory. Whoever learned how to ride a bike? Well, bike riding at first was a little difficult. I remember scraping my legs. Nobody taught me. I had to learn myself painfully. But after a while, it's like you don't even think about it. I mean, you can even ride a bike in such a way, if you've got enough speed and a normal bike, you can actually take turns without using your hands because you're balanced. You're like, you tilt a little, tilt back. Everybody knows this. It's your muscles and your body knows what to do. I haven't ridden a bike in like 20 years. But if I get on a bike, it's going to come back. I know it because it's in my muscle memory. It's really weird. Okay? Try it if you don't believe me. It's really weird. Well, what if this discipline, this practice, actually is like a muscle memory for your soul? What if it's soul memory? This is what this one couple wrote. Spiritual discipline, doing something for the sake of putting a good habit, time with God, for example, then is developing soul reflexes. Your very reflex, your natural response is not to bite, but to be gentle. Okay? Your very soul reflex is not to be responding in vengeance, but in forgiveness. Okay? What spiritual discipline is like developing soul reflexes so that we know how to live, and we discipline ourselves to develop this soul memory. That's a beautiful way of understanding how these habits can be for us. I'm going to move up a little faster. Well, in that book about the power of habits, he describes this three-step process, this loop of how habits work. They start at first and they're prompted by a cue. Something cues you, something triggers you, okay? And it puts you down a path where you start doing a routine. I used to be a smoker when I was in college, and I know exactly what this means. Because there's tons of cues. You're really stressed about, I used to be, stressed about a test that's coming in, an exam or an assignment, and that's the cue. I get a little anxious, and I reach into my pocket and I get my pack of cigarettes and I start. All the smokers know what I'm talking about, okay? Right? You're packing the tobacco down, right? Then you pull one out. Sometimes people have a little thing with their fingers and they flick it. Some people have these lighters and they go. Ding! You know what I'm talking about? It's this whole routine, and then you light, and the first one you take deep. Sometimes you hold. That first exhale is like, oh, and then the nicotine hits your system. You go through this routine. And once you've gone through the routine, then you get the reward. And the reward is not just the buzz you get from the highly chemically processed nicotine, tobacco. The reward is sometimes social. Because if you were a smoker, even back then, you're like outcasts, except for the other smokers. You build friendships really easily. Oh, you smoke? Come on, let's talk. Right? I'm not joking. The reward is social sometimes. Your reward is somehow, it's the whole experience of the routine. You know, the patch doesn't always work perfectly because it's not just physical, it's psychological. After you eat, there's a cue. You have to have a smoke. After certain activities, I don't know what it is, but you just have to have a smoke. But you realize how powerful this thing is? You know how difficult it is to break this pattern? Because this habit, because it's cue, routine, reward. Cue, routine, reward. That's how it works. I'm not the only one who puts it this way, but I put it in 3 R's to help us understand how habits work. So that we can be aware of them, so that we can actually even re-engineer them in godly ways. Number 1, it starts with a cue, a reminder. Something sets you off. Something you don't even realize, and all of a sudden, you're moving into a specific routine, kind of like smoking. A cue that if you allow to prompt you well, in fact, it'll give you the strength to move into your routine well. Every morning, before 6 o'clock, an email arrives in each of our grace groups' inbox. I had to make sure that they didn't give me an email. I have several emails, by the way. One that's for people that I really want to hear from. Others, like for companies that I don't want to hear from, right? But I want the free offer. I have to make sure that they gave us the real one. It arrives in their real inbox, and now that's their cue. Second is routine. You go through a specific thing. Now, it's really helpful to do it for those of you in your grace groups. Same time, same place, same thing, same process. Because don't just do it as I'm going to be spontaneous today alone. Get the routine down. It's going to help you to develop a habit. Okay? We do 2 minutes of silence before God, 8 minutes of reading Scripture. It's going to bump up to 10 minutes this week. Okay? 3 minutes of reflection. What did God say? And then 2 minutes of prayer. 15 minutes. It's going to be 17 minutes this week. How easy is that? Okay, something that's regular and routine over and over again. And the third is reward. I was thinking of like even doing a reward of $20 Starbucks ticket for the best person in each group, who did their daily connect each day. That's not actually a good incentive, because then after a while, you're not going to do it if you don't get any more Starbucks, right? The reward actually is, how did God meet you? Okay? And already some testimonies are coming through. Just beautiful expressions of how little gifts of just how God is, even like, headache is gone. Little stuff, beautiful stuff, little rewards. And the reward of actually doing with other people, realizing this is becoming a habit, a beautiful habit in our lives. Jesus lived this way. He often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. He had the habit of wanting to spend time with God directly. It made a lot of sense when I backtracked and read this verse with a different light. Jesus says, when you go pray, don't pray in front of other people so that everybody can say, wow, you're so spiritual. Go into your room in a lonely place when nobody sees you. Talk and pray to your Father who is unseen. What is the beautiful part of this? It says, then your Father who sees what's done in secret will reward you. When we live out this habitual life, there are rewards. And I'm not talking about, I was thinking of like giving icons. I have an Apple Watch, and if you get your 3 rings activity, by the way, anybody know what I'm talking about? One ring is for you have to stand at least a little while each hour for 12 hours so that you're not completely sedentary all day long. Another one is 30 minutes of exercise. Another one is you have to burn a certain amount of calories as you move. But it's actually kind of like stupid reward. They give me little icons. Yeah. Oh, you did double your move today or triple your move today. Or they give me little icons like, oh, you have a move streak. I have a 37-day move streak. For 37 days I've not missed my move requirements. I've been active and so on and so forth. Those little rewards, you might not think they're important, but they help you to nail down a habit. And so what does it mean for us? How do we apply some of this? Number one, you got to audit your habits. If 40% of what you do is habitual, you realize there's a lot that you don't realize you're doing. Some of it might take such a big part of your life that other things are put on hold for you actually to follow through on your habits. Some might be really helpful, and you want to double down on, right? Some you might have to replace with a good one. Well, you got to audit your habits before God, hopefully before a great Christian friend or somebody who cares about you. Look at your habits and realize God wants to shape your habits in beautiful ways. Second, you have to start to intentionally re-engineer them. You got to put into place a system of cues. Okay? If you're triggered to want to eat something really bad because you saw, a Shake Shack, commercial, guess what? You have to put something else in there to actually cue you to do something different and follow through on a different routine. All right? You have to re-engineer intentionally. Otherwise, we do the same thing over and over again. And sometimes it gets so locked in, it starts to take over our lives. God cares about our way of life. Not so that we can be a holy person, because how we live affects our future and affects other people. He takes our life seriously. We have the choices to do our life the same way again and again and again. Maybe be inspired one day, say, I'm going to do this, but have no help to actually make life change. Or through building good habits, right habits, with God and others, we actually can see over a long period of time, amazing life change. They say old dogs can't learn new tricks, and I'm 49. I'm going to be 49 years today. And I'm realizing I'm able to change my way of life more than I did when I was a younger person. It's weird, because I had to struggle a lot. I had to handle a lot of things. And as along the way I realized, as a lot of my old habits are being deconstructed, I'm putting energy into better habits. I've seen people in their 50s and 60s, and they are so locked in, they cannot change. Because their whole lives, they lived doing their same old. If you're young, you can actually incorporate a different way of living now. Intentionally putting in good habits. And guess what? As you grow older, you still are flexible. If you're like me, a little older, you can learn this now. So that in your 40s, 50s, 60s, guess what? You're actually able to move with God, put in new habits as He calls you. You bow your heads with me as we begin to pray. I did mention, some habits that are bad. We want to remember that God is not a God who is so judging and judgmental. He is a perfect, righteous judge. But when He sees us and when He takes our life into account, His purpose is to bring us life. It is by His grace that actually I'm no longer a smoker. I tried it myself and I failed. Every time I had this cue, I got into a different routine. I would call out, Holy Spirit, help me. And He showed up. I got this reward of strength, of a different kind of buzz. It might not be smoking, it might be something else. And you know it. It's a habit that is so destructive. It's kept in secret. If you don't get a handle of it, God doesn't get a handle of it in your life. It's going to tear you apart. He loves you so much. He cares about your life. Your life is significant. He takes your life seriously. That He's going to look at your way of life. Will you let Him? Will you come to Him? Will you say, God, I want to be like You. I know You're not trying to look at my life to tear me down, but to build me up. What do You want to work on today? What do You want to work on this season? Maybe you're realizing you have to develop better habits and you don't have the mechanism, you don't have the willpower, and that's everybody. There is both God and His people. They're going to stand with you, walk with you. Maybe you don't have the keystone habit of a daily connect with God. Don't you know how much He wants to give you that? You cannot acquire it by doing it every now and then. It comes as it becomes something you do over and over to a point where it's in your soul memory. God wants that for you. Take some time, whatever it might be. He's here. Talk to Him, respond to Him. We've got prayer teams as well as we've got pastors who are always available to walk with you afterwards, follow through. But would you let God look at your habits? Would you invite Him to set up good, godly, life-giving ones as you imitate Him? Let's pray. Would you pray?